Good morning and happy week 5. We're almost finished. This is so exciting. Sad, but exciting, really exciting. You'll still have lots of summer left. So of course, you're taking summer too. Um, anyway, I just want to talk for a few minutes about the recast argument. Okay, so I already mentioned that obviously in the whatever the blurb I wrote up on the announcement page, um, I will be grading your capstones today and tomorrow. Typically, I would already be looking at them, but I have an event thingy later today that I've got to go to. So you'll see them popping in, so watch for those. I will also say this briefly now, and I'll address it more later once I see the papers. If your capstone essay comes back and you're just not fully satisfied with your grade, and you turned it in on time, and it's complete, I will give you the option to revise it before the class ends. So that's also partly why I want to get it back to you right away. Plus, I try to get stuff back quickly anyway. Um, you'll have the option to revise it if you know, like, maybe you just really bombed the intro or the conclusion, and if you just had one more draft, you could really pull that up. Um, I'll give you that option, and I'll talk more about that later. So just kind of keep that in mind. Okay, so the recast. Let me just briefly capture what I want you thinking about as you're exploring some of these options. The purpose of the recast is to rework your argument for a specific audience and to do it in a multimodal fashion. Okay, the majority of the arguments that we receive today, that we get, that we encounter regularly, are found in multimodal forms. So maybe it's a public service announcement, maybe it's a TED Talk, maybe it's a YouTube channel recording. Maybe it is I guess that's a video blog. There we go, a video blog. Maybe it's through like an advertising campaign of some sort. Maybe it's flyers, brochures, things of that nature. What I want you to do is think about how or what you could do to your argument or to some facet of your argument. It doesn't have to be your exact capstone position paper argument. Maybe it's some piece of that. Maybe you look at, somebody was doing gun control. So maybe you look at, instead of talking about the whole issue of gun control, you make an appeal to allowing or not allowing teachers to carry in high schools or junior highs or in public schools or in schools in general. You do that specific component of the argument. You can narrow it. You can work off of that. If you were looking at, we were looking. Somebody wrote about. Gosh, my brain is fried this morning. If you're looking at farming and what we're doing with our animals, maybe you make a specific appeal to a company. You can direct it right at Tyson because maybe they're not, maybe they're abusing their animals along in their farming of those animals and production. So think a little bit about who might benefit from hearing your argument. So then you're going to take the stage with that. All right, that's what I want you to have in mind. Then once you decide, you have to think, what's going to be most effective? Like, what's the best way I can reach my target audience? And in doing that, you will design a specific appeal that works for that audience. So maybe it's a public service announcement, maybe it's a TED Talk, maybe it's a flyer that you create. But that's what the recast is. It's you taking some component, some facet of your argument, reshaping it for a very specific audience, and doing so in a very persuasive manner. Where the academic argument definitely gives your position voice, the recast gives you a little more freedom to play with some of those appeals. Okay, two things before you even begin to do that. First, I want you to examine some existing campaigns, and that's your homework for Wednesday. Due Wednesday night. You need to evaluate an existing multimodal campaign. You're probably all familiar with the Truth ads. You're familiar with the Got Milk ads, things like that. Examine an existing campaign and look at what they do. How do they design their ads to appeal to that specific audience? Who is that specific audience? In other words, where do these messages appear? For whom are they designed? think a little bit about that. Then look at the kinds of appeals that are used. Is it primarily emotional? Do you see, and this is the other piece of your homework for this week, any logical fallacies? Okay, do you see any appeals that are being abused, misused? We're all pretty familiar with like attacks against the person, ad hominem attacks. Do you see any of that going on? Do you see any illogical constructions in the development of the logic or the language? I've posted a video that I want you guys to watch about logical fallacies. It's important that we understand and recognize them. It's not critical that you know the name. I don't expect you to say, that's a post hoc ergo propter hoc argument. You don't have to identify them in that way. It'd be nice if you could, but you don't have to. But I want you to be aware of when reasoning goes awry, when things go wrong. So if there's a non sequitur, if there's a false cause and effect, if there's a false analogy, okay? And some of these things you already know because we talk about them in everyday life. If you've ever heard anyone say, oh my gosh, just stop, that's like comparing apples to oranges. That's a false analogy. So the comparison is not valid, it's not legitimate. So those are the kinds of things you look at. So maybe you talk about that. Maybe you look at the strengths of the campaign. How do they logically build their argument? How do they use visuals to enhance their message? If you look at any of the texting and driving, anti-texting and driving, not pro, anti-texting and driving campaigns, there's a lot of appeals to emotion, right? So we know it can wait. Because the outcome, of course, the consequence is so tragic, and we need to see that, and that's what marketers are keying in on as they look at this. So think a little bit about that. You examine a multimodal campaign. That's your homework. You're going to evaluate that for Wednesday. In your efforts at finding, identifying, and doing that, you're also going to watch the video on logical fallacies. You're going to watch a lot of different logical or a lot of different multimodal campaigns. I also posted in that recast module a bunch of different links to font and images and impact of such things that you can start perusing. Just kind of work your way through some of those. I hope this wasn't too confusing. It's also all laid out on Brightspace. I keep wanting to call it Springboard still. It's all laid out on Brightspace, but I want you to think a little bit about it. I just want you to concentrate on the fact that ultimately, when you get to the point where you're going to create your recast argument, it is going to be a multimodal version. It's not written. It's going to be something that appears for a specific audience. It's going to be something that targets some very precise component of your argument. Okay, so specific audience, specific argument, strong position, and strong appeals. So start thinking along those lines. You'll create that and you'll upload it. So it might be a video, it might be whatever it is that you end up creating. Maybe it's a short TED Talk, a video blog, a podcast. I don't care what you do. You have to decide, though, which medium is right for your particular argument. If you're going to do, let's say that you want to talk about not texting and driving, and you want your target audience to be teenagers, creating a PowerPoint would be the least effective way to get to them, right? Like, how many of you want to sit down and watch a PowerPoint about not texting and driving? Come on, that's not effective, right? So think about what would work and how you could find your audience, your targeted audience, and get them. And then you'll be writing an evaluation of that that'll accompany the actual recast argument that you will upload. Now, let me briefly talk about this, and I swear I say briefly and then I keep talking, and I'm going to talk more about this recast tomorrow after you start looking at some that are out there. You will probably need, if you're doing a video, you'll probably need to upload it to YouTube because Brightspace doesn't house videos very well. It doesn't manage the content very well. And that's fine. Or if you need to send it to me as a separate file, that's also fine. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. You can do that in any number of ways, but you're gonna have to make sure that I have access to the link, obviously. Okay. 5th blog is also due this week, and it's going to be due earlier this week because the class ends, and you have a blog project due on Sunday. All of these things are posted on the announcement page. Please, please, please take a look. Email me, text me, let me know if you have any questions. I will be updating some more information about the recast tomorrow. So for now, start taking a look around, find an existing campaign, watch the logical fallacies video, work your way through some of that multimodal material, and have yourselves a fantastic Monday. Talk to you later.